The repair bay of Station 847 hummed with the usual chaos of machinery and warning alerts. James wiped the sweat from his forehead as he studied the holographic maintenance log floating above his worn workbench. Something wasn't adding up in the numbers, and it had been bothering him for weeks. Another cooling system failure in Section 12, he muttered, adding the latest incident to his growing database. 3 years of working as the station's lead repair specialist had taught him to trust his gut when patterns emerge, and right now, his gut was screaming that something was very wrong. The station's pristine corridors and sleek design masked a crumbling infrastructure. What bothered James most wasn't just the increasing frequency of failures, but how they mirrored reports he'd been hearing from other stations across the sector. All of them had one thing in common. They'd been upgraded with the Galactic Council's standardized maintenance protocols. A soft chime announced someone entering the repair bay. Still obsessing over those logs, Lisa walked in, carrying 2 cups of synthetic coffee. She'd been James's assistant for the past year, and her keen eye for detail had proven invaluable. "Look at this," James gestured to the hologram, expanding it to show a sector-wide view. Every station that implemented the Council's new maintenance systems has experienced a 300% increase in critical failures. But here's the weird part. Stations that kept their human maintenance crews are running just fine. Lisa set down the coffee and leaned in, her eyes narrowing as she studied the data. That can't be a coincidence. The Council claimed their systems were perfect, that human maintenance methods were too crude and unreliable. James pulled up another chart, this one showing the maintenance history of Station 847 before and after the Council's upgrades. Perfect, huh? Tell that to the life support system that's failed twice this month. We never had these problems when we were doing things the crude way. As they dug deeper into the maintenance logs, a disturbing pattern emerged. The Council's automated systems weren't just failing more often. They were failing in ways that required specialized Council-approved repair teams. Teams that, coincidentally, charged astronomical fees for their services. "James," Lisa's voice dropped to a whisper, "I think we need to look at other stations. If this is happening everywhere." Before she could finish, their tablets buzzed simultaneously. Another critical system failure, this time in the station's agricultural sector. The Council's approved repair team was already en route, but they were 6 hours away. 6 hours. James grabbed his toolkit. The hydroponic system won't last too. Come on. They rushed to the agricultural sector, ignoring the automated warnings about unauthorized repair attempts. Inside, they found exactly what James had expected, a simple power coupling failure that any competent human engineer could fix in minutes. As James worked, Lisa documented everything with her tablet. The failure, the repair process, and most importantly, how a primitive human solution solved a problem that the Council's perfect system had overlooked. "You realize what this means, right?" Lisa asked as they walked back to the repair bay. "The Council's entire standardization program might be a scam," James finished. "But we need proof. Real proof, not just maintenance logs and theories." Back in the repair bay, they began compiling their data into a secure file. Every failure, every repair, every pattern that showed how the Council's improvements were actually making things worse. They worked through the night, fueled by synthetic coffee and growing anger at what they were uncovering. As the station's artificial dawn began to brighten the corridors, James looked at their completed initial report. "This is just the beginning," he said, closing the holographic display. "We need to contact other human repair crews, see if they've noticed the same patterns. The Council's been feeding everyone lies about human engineering being inferior, and it's time we found out why." Lisa nodded, already pulling up a secure communication channel. "I know some people on Station 623 who've been asking similar questions. If we're right about this," James said grimly, "we've just stumbled onto the biggest engineering scandal in galactic history. and something tells me the Council isn't going to be happy when we expose it. The maintenance tunnels of Station 847 were a maze of pipes and circuitry, far from the polished corridors above. James crawled through a narrow passage, his headlamp illuminating the dusty space ahead. These tunnels told the real story of the station's health, and it wasn't pretty. "Found another one," he called out, his voice echoing slightly. Below him, a Council-approved power conduit was showing signs of stress fractures, exactly where it shouldn't be possible according to their perfect specifications. Lisa's voice crackled through his earpiece. "That's the 5th one this week. Same pattern as the others." "Identical," James confirmed, taking detailed scans with his handheld device. "The Council's design is causing micro-vibrations that their sensors don't detect. Give it another month, and this whole section could fail." A sudden noise made James freeze. Footsteps echoed through the maintenance tunnel, accompanied by the distinctive sound of Council-issue boots. He quickly shut off his headlamp and pressed himself against the wall, heart pounding. The footsteps paused nearby. "Hello," a voice called out, but it wasn't the harsh tone of a Council inspector. Instead, it sounded nervous, almost conspiratorial. James recognized the voice. "Torque, is that you?" A blue-skinned alien emerged from a connecting tunnel, his 4 eyes blinking rapidly in the dim light. Torque was a Council engineer who had always seemed different from his colleagues, more interested in practical solutions than theoretical perfection. "I followed you," Torque admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "I've seen your maintenance logs. You're right about the failures, but there's more to it than you know." James studied the alien carefully. "How much more?" "The Council." Torque glanced nervously over his shoulder. "They're not just replacing human systems because they think theirs are better. They're doing it because human engineering is too independent, too easy to repair without their oversight." Lisa's voice came through the earpiece again. "James, get him to the secure room. Now." They made their way through the maintenance tunnels to a small storage room James and Lisa had converted into their investigation headquarters. The walls were covered with holographic displays showing maintenance data from dozens of stations. Torque's eyes widened as he took in the information. "You've gathered more than I thought possible. But look here," he pointed to a section of data. "The failure patterns aren't random. They're designed to escalate gradually, making stations increasingly dependent on Council-approved repairs. Designed to fail." Lisa had joined them, her face grim. "You're saying this is intentional?" Torque nodded, pulling out a data crystal. "I copied these from the Council's secure servers. They're the original design specifications. Compare them to what was actually installed." As they analyzed the new data, the truth became clear. The Council's upgrades were engineered to create a controlled pattern of failures. Nothing immediately catastrophic, but enough to require constant maintenance from their approved teams. "This is why they pushed so hard to remove human maintenance crews," James said, pieces clicking into place. "Our methods are too adaptable. We find ways to fix things without their expensive replacement parts. The Council calls it maintenance standardization," Torque explained. "But it's really about control. They're terrified of human engineering because it works without their oversight, because it teaches others to be self-sufficient." Lisa was already incorporating the new data into their investigation files. "We need to document everything. Every failure, every deviation from the original specs, every credit spent on unnecessary repairs." "It's dangerous," Torque warned. "The Council has ways of dealing with those who threaten their authority." James looked at the displays surrounding them, each one showing evidence of the Council's deception. More dangerous than letting them slowly take control of every station in the galaxy. More dangerous than watching them dismantle working systems just to replace them with ones designed to fail. "The Council believes in perfect systems," Torque said, his voice tinged with bitterness. "But they've forgotten that perfection isn't about flawless theory, it's about what actually works." "Then let's remind them," Lisa said, pulling up a new display. "We've got stations across 3 sectors reporting similar patterns. If we can prove the Council is deliberately engineering failures, we'll need more evidence, James interrupted. And we'll need to be careful how we gather it. Torque, are you with us? The alien engineer looked at the data crystal he'd smuggled out, then at the humans who dared to challenge the Council's authority. Yes, he said firmly. It's time someone fixed this broken system. Red emergency lights flashed throughout Central Hub Station, the largest space station in the Orion Arm. Warning sirens blared as thousands of aliens rushed through the corridors, their panic growing with each new system failure announcement. In the station's control center, James watched in horror as one critical system after another began shutting down. He had arrived just 2 days ago with Lisa and Torque to gather more evidence. Now they were witnessing their worst fears coming true. Primary life support failing in sectors 7 through 12, an automated voice announced. Backup systems not responding. Council repair teams estimate arrival in 4 hours. 4 hours? A tall, insectoid station administrator chittered in distress. We'll lose atmosphere in 2. Where are the approved repair crews? All Council teams are currently assigned to other emergencies, another administrator reported, their tentacles writhing in anxiety. They're saying we need to wait our turn. James exchanged looks with Lisa and Torque. They had predicted this would happen, but not so soon. The Council's faulty systems were failing faster than even their worst projections. I can fix it, James stepped forward. I'm a certified human repair specialist. The administrators turned to him, their alien features showing various forms of doubt and desperation. Human repairs are not approved for critical systems, one began, but was cut off by a violent shudder that ran through the station. Structural integrity compromised in main power distribution hub, the automated voice announced. Cascade failure imminent. The lead administrator's compound eyes fixed on James. Can you really fix it? Yes, James said firmly. But you need to give me full access and override the Council's repair protocols. A moment of tense silence followed, broken by another violent shudder. The administrator made a gesture that translated roughly to death before bureaucracy in their culture. Do it, whatever it takes. James was already moving, Lisa and Torque right behind him. They sprinted through corridors increasingly filled with the thin atmosphere warning fog. Torque, get me schematics of the power distribution hub. Lisa, I need you to start rerouting emergency power to keep minimal life support running. The power distribution hub was a massive chamber filled with the Council's perfect systems, all of which were now failing spectacularly. James took one look at the complex setup and knew exactly what had gone wrong. They overcomplicated everything, he muttered, pulling tools from his kit. Added 10 points of failure where they only needed 1. His hands moved quickly, bypassing the Council's elaborate safety systems that were, ironically, preventing the actual safety systems from working. He could hear Lisa in his earpiece, coordinating with station personnel to maintain what little power they had left. James, Torque called out urgently. The Council's systems are fighting your repairs. They're programmed to reject unauthorized fixes. Then we reject them right back, James growled, pulling a small device from his pocket, one of his own design, made specifically for situations like this. He plugged it into the main console, and his override codes began dismantling the Council's restrictive protocols. The chamber's lights flickered dangerously. In the distance, they could hear the groaning of metal under stress. They had minutes, maybe less. James's hands flew over the controls, implementing repairs that would have given Council engineers heart attacks. He bypassed regulators, crossed systems that were never meant to be crossed, and basically broke every rule in the Council's engineering handbook. And it worked. The station's shuddering slowly ceased. Emergency lights switched back to standard lighting. The thin fog of atmosphere warnings began to dissipate. Primary systems restoring, the automated voice announced. Life support stabilizing. Power distribution normalized. The control center erupted in various alien sounds of relief and celebration. But James, Lisa, and Torque weren't celebrating. They were documenting everything. "Get all of it," James told Lisa as she recorded the scene. "Every failed system, every override we had to implement, every life that was at risk because of their perfect design." Torque was examining the Council's systems with new eyes. They really did it. They designed everything to be unrepairable without their intervention. If you hadn't been here. "But we were here," Lisa said, her voice hard. "And now we have proof that their systems nearly killed everyone on this station. Proof we can share." A new alarm sounded, this one announcing the arrival of Council repair ships. James smiled grimly as he watched them approach on the monitors. Perfect timing. Let's show them how their perfect system was fixed by imperfect humans. The Council repair team stood in Central Hub Station's main engineering bay, their expressions a mixture of horror and disbelief as they examined James's emergency repairs. Their leader, a tall figure in elaborate technical robes, raised all three of his hands in obvious distress. "This is impossible," he declared, scanning the jerry-rigged systems with his diagnostic tools. "You've connected the auxiliary power grid directly to life support, bypassing 17 safety protocols." "And it works," James replied calmly, standing his ground. Behind him, Lisa was recording everything while Torque watched with barely concealed amusement. "The station's running at 98% efficiency, better than it has in months." The Council engineer's skin shifted to a deeper shade of purple, a sign of extreme agitation in his species. "But it's not according to specifications. The power flow should be regulated through the Council's approved pathways, with proper monitoring and then everyone would be dead." Lisa interrupted, stepping forward with her datapad. "Your proper pathways were the problem. Look at these readings from just before the crisis." She projected a hologram showing the cascade of failures that had nearly doomed the station. The Council team huddled around it, their protests growing weaker as they saw the evidence. "This is how engineering really works," James explained, walking over to a particularly crude-looking repair where he'd used maintenance bot parts to rebuild a failed power coupling. "Sometimes you have to work with what you have, not what some manual says you should have." The Council's chief engineer pointed at the makeshift repair. "But that's just spare parts held together with emergency sealant." "Yep," James grinned. "And it's handling more power than your perfect coupling ever did. Want to know why?" He patted the jury-rigged assembly. "Because I built it to work, not to look good on a specification sheet." More Council engineers were arriving at the station now, drawn by reports of unauthorized repairs to critical systems. Each new arrival would go through the same cycle: horror at James's methods, disbelief at their effectiveness, and finally, reluctant fascination. Torque had been quietly talking with some of the younger Council engineers, explaining how the human repairs worked. To James's surprise, many of them were taking notes. "The Council teaches us that perfection comes from perfect design," one of them said, examining a bypass James had created. "But this is perfection through adaptation, through understanding the actual needs of the system." Lisa was moving through the engineering bay, documenting every repair and its performance metrics. "Notice how none of these fixes required expensive Council-approved parts?" she asked loudly enough for everyone to hear. Funny how that works. The station's alien administrators had joined them, their earlier panic replaced by cautious optimism. The lead administrator addressed the Council repair team. "Your arrival time was 4 hours. The human fixed everything in 20 minutes using spare parts. Explain why we should reinstall your systems." The Council engineers had no answer for that. James gathered everyone around the main engineering display. "Look, engineering isn't about following a rulebook. It's about understanding how things work and being ready to adapt when they don't." He pulled up schematics of his repairs. "Everything I did today was based on basic principles that anyone can learn." "But the Council says only their certified engineers can maintain these systems," one of the alien technicians protested. "The Council says a lot of things," Torque replied. "But maybe it's time to start questioning why they want to make simple repairs so complicated." Throughout the day, more station engineers came to examine James's work. Instead of lecturing them about proper procedures, he showed them how to think creatively, how to use available materials, how to understand systems instead of just following manuals. This is why they wanted to get rid of human maintenance crews. Lisa whispered to James as they watched a group of alien engineers enthusiastically taking apart and rebuilding one of his jury-rigged repairs. "We don't just fix things, we teach others how to fix things themselves." The council's chief engineer approached them, his color now a more natural shade. "Your methods are unorthodox," he admitted, "but I cannot deny their effectiveness. Perhaps there is something to be learned here." James smiled. "That's the first sensible thing a council engineer has said all day. Now, who wants to learn how to rebuild a power converter using nothing but spare parts and common sense?" The crowd of eager engineers that gathered around him was all the answer he needed. The secure communications room buzzed with activity as messages poured in from across the galaxy. After the incident at Central Hub Station, other human repair crews had started coming forward. Each message told a similar story: council systems failing, humans fixing them, and stations questioning the council's authority. Another one from the Rigel sector, Lisa announced, adding a new marker to their galactic map. The holographic display now showed hundreds of points of light, each representing a station where humans had secretly maintained working systems alongside the council's failing ones. James watched the map grow, remembering how this had all started with just one station's maintenance logs. Now it was becoming a movement. "How many crews have contacted us?" "Over 300 so far," Lisa replied, scanning through the messages. "And it's not just humans anymore. Look at this." She pulled up a message from a maintenance crew in the Carina arm. The video showed aliens of various species working alongside humans, learning to repair and improve systems without council oversight. "They replaced our whole atmospheric processing plant," the alien crew leader explained in the recording. "Said the old one wasn't up to council standards. But the old one worked fine for 20 years. The new one failed in 6 months, and they wanted more credits to fix it than the original plant cost." More messages played, each adding to the growing evidence. A station in the Perseus arm had lost artificial gravity because of a council upgrade. Another in the Cygnus region had its entire communications array shut down by automated council protocols that detected unauthorized, but working repairs. Torque entered the room, followed by several other council engineers who had defected after seeing the truth. "The council is starting to respond," he reported. "They're sending out emergency teams to inspect stations that have reported successful human repairs." "Inspect or remove?" James asked grimly. "Both," one of the defectors answered. "They're calling it a security audit, but the teams have orders to replace any unauthorized repairs with council-approved systems." Lisa pulled up another section of their gathered evidence. "Look at these maintenance cost records. Every station that switched to council systems saw their repair expenses increase by at least 500%, some by over 1,000%. It was never about making things better," James said, watching more markers appear on the map. "It was about making stations dependent on them, about controlling who could fix what and how much it would cost." A new message flashed on the main screen, this one from a station they hadn't contacted. The station's chief engineer, a massive creature with crystalline features, spoke urgently. "We heard about what happened at Central Hub Station. The council is demanding we upgrade our systems, but we've seen the reports. We need help. We have humans on our repair crew, but the council's threatening to remove them. What should we do?" Similar messages were coming in from dozens of stations. Some had already lost their human crews. Others were fighting to keep them. All were asking for help. "We can't just sit on this evidence anymore," Lisa said, looking at the growing number of distress calls. "The council's pushing harder because they know we're exposing them." James nodded, then turned to address everyone in the room. "Start organizing the crews. Every station that still has human engineers, pair them with stations that have lost theirs. Torque, get your people to document every forced upgrade, every removed repair, every credit demanded for unnecessary work. The council won't like this, one of the defectors warned. They'll try to stop us. Let them try, James replied, watching another dozen markers appear on the map. They've spent years telling everyone that human engineering is crude and unreliable. But now everyone's seeing the truth, that sometimes the simplest solution is the best one, that understanding how to fix something is more important than following a manual. Lisa was already coordinating with other stations, creating a network of repair crews sharing knowledge and resources. The council's biggest mistake, she said with a smile, was thinking they could stop humans from fixing things. The communications room continued to fill with messages from across the galaxy. Each one represented a station learning the truth, a crew deciding to resist, a system being properly repaired despite the council's protests. They tried to break everything, James said, watching the movement grow. But they forgot one important thing. Breaking things is just giving humans more stuff to fix. Deep within Central Hub Station's secure archives, James stared at the holographic display in disbelief. Beside him, Lisa and Torque were equally stunned by what they'd discovered. After weeks of decoding encrypted council communications, they'd finally found the truth, and it was worse than they'd imagined. They knew, James said quietly, his voice tight with anger. They knew their systems would fail. They planned it from the start. The documents floating before them told a damning story. Years before humans had joined the galactic community, the Council had maintained absolute control over all technological systems. Every repair, every upgrade, every maintenance procedure had to go through them. Look at these profit projections. Lisa pointed to a section of data. They calculated exactly how much they could charge for repairs before stations would start looking for alternatives. They weren't just selling broken systems. They were selling dependency. Torque moved through the files with practiced speed, his 4 eyes scanning multiple documents at once. Here's the report from when humans first started working on station maintenance. They were terrified of us from the beginning. The report detailed the Council's growing concern about human engineering practices. It wasn't that human methods were crude or unsafe. It was that they were too effective, too easy to learn, too independent of Council control. They called it dangerous technological democratization. Lisa read aloud. They were afraid because we showed others how to fix things themselves. A message flashed on their secure channel. Another station was reporting Council enforcers arriving to remove their human maintenance crew. These security audits were becoming more frequent as the Council desperately tried to regain control. Wait, Torque suddenly said, pulling up a new set of files. This goes even deeper. Look at the original station designs, before the Council's upgrades. The schematics showed elegant, simple systems that any competent engineer could maintain. But overlaid on them were the Council's modifications, layers of unnecessary complexity, deliberate weak points, and proprietary components that could only be obtained through Council-approved suppliers. They didn't just make things harder to fix, James realized. They made them impossible to fix without their help. Every upgrade, every standardization protocol, every safety regulation, it was all designed to keep stations dependent on them. Lisa was documenting everything, making copies of files that proved the Council's deception. They'd been sabotaging working systems for decades, forcing stations to remove reliable equipment and replace it with their approved versions. Another alert came through. More stations reporting critical failures after mandatory Council upgrades. But now they could see the pattern behind it all. The failures weren't accidents or design flaws. They were features. Here's their internal maintenance price list, Torque said grimly. They charge more for repairs than some stations make in a year. And look at these notes about encouraging compliance through system criticality. They mean they put the most breakable parts in the most critical systems, James translated. So stations can't afford to say no to their repairs. The archive room's lights suddenly flickered. Lisa quickly checked their security feeds. Council ships just docked at the station. A lot of them. They must know we're in the archives, Torque said, his color paling slightly. They'll try to stop us from releasing this information. James looked at the evidence they'd gathered. Proof of decades of deliberate sabotage, of a conspiracy to keep entire civilizations technologically dependent. They can try, but they're about to learn something about humans they didn't account for in their calculations. What's that? Lisa asked, still copying files as quickly as she could. We don't just fix machines, James said, beginning to transmit their findings to every station in range. We fix broken systems. And the Council's system, it's the most broken thing in the galaxy. The sound of heavy footsteps echoed from the corridor outside. Council security forces were approaching. But it was too late. The truth was already spreading across the galaxy, from station to station, system to system. Ready? James asked his companions, watching the data stream out faster than the Council could possibly stop it. Lisa nodded, fingers flying over the controls. Ready to show the galaxy how humans fix things. Torque stood with them, no longer afraid. Ready to build something better. The archive room door began to glow as Council forces tried to cut through it. But they were too late. The truth was out, and no force in the galaxy could make people unsee it. The Council's Grand Assembly Chamber had never seen anything like this. Thousands of holograms flickered in the vast space, each representing a station demanding to be heard. The evidence James, Lisa, and Torque had released had spread across the galaxy like a wildfire, impossible to contain or control. The Council leaders sat in their elevated seats, their usual calm demeanor shattered as station after station broadcast proof of their deception. Emergency repair bills that could have funded new stations. Critical systems deliberately designed to fail. Decades of technological suppression, all in the name of maintaining control. You cannot seriously expect us to believe that humans' primitive methods are superior to our perfected systems, one Council leader declared, his voice carrying less conviction than usual. Primitive. A hologram flickered to life in the center of the chamber. It was James, broadcasting from Central Hub Station's engineering bay. Behind him stood a mixed crew of humans and aliens, all wearing repair crew badges. Let me show you something primitive. He gestured, and the chamber's displays filled with side-by-side comparisons. Council systems versus human repairs. Failure rates. Maintenance costs. Emergency response times. The numbers told a story that no amount of bureaucratic double-talk could hide. Your perfect systems failed at Central Hub Station. Lisa's voice joined in. They're failing everywhere. But humans, we keep things running. Not because we're special, but because we understand something you forgot long ago. And what? Another Council leader asked stiffly. Would that be? That the best system is the one that works, James answered. Not the one that looks best on paper, not the one that makes the most profit, but the one that keeps people safe and stations running. More holograms activated, station administrators, repair crews, even some Council engineers who had defected. Each had a story of how human engineering had saved lives, solved problems, and taught others to do the same. The Council's authority over station maintenance is hereby revoked, declared the administrator of Central Hub Station, speaking for thousands of others. We're implementing new standards. Real standards based on what works, not what makes the most profit. The Council leaders sputtered protests, but their words were drowned out by the cheers echoing through the chamber. Stations across the galaxy were already removing the Council's failed systems, replacing them with simpler, more reliable designs. You can't do this, one Council leader shouted. Our systems are perfect. They're standardized. They're finished, Torque interrupted, stepping forward in his own hologram. I've served the Council for years, believing in our superiority. But humans taught me something valuable. True perfection isn't about control. It's about empowerment. The chamber's displays showed scenes from across the galaxy. Human repair crews working alongside alien engineers, teaching them the practical skills the council had tried to suppress. Simple solutions replacing overcomplicated failures, knowledge spreading freely, unbound by artificial restrictions. "Here's what's going to happen," James announced, his voice firm but not unkind. "Every station will have the right to choose their own maintenance methods. Every repair crew, human or alien, will be free to fix things their own way. And the council," he paused, looking directly at the leaders, "the council will learn to adapt, or it will become as obsolete as its failed systems." The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some leaders raged against the change, but others saw the inevitable. Their power had always rested on controlling who could fix what. Now that control was gone, broken by human stubbornness and ingenuity. "It won't be easy," Lisa commented as they watched the council's authority crumble. "Some stations have depended on them for centuries." "That's why we'll help them," James replied. "We'll teach them what humans have always known, that the best way to fix a broken system is to work together, share knowledge, and never be afraid to try something new." Across the galaxy, stations began a new era. Council perfection gave way to practical solutions. Repair crews shared techniques across species and sectors. The rigid hierarchy of technological control was replaced by a network of mutual support and learning. And in repair bays everywhere, humans taught others the most important lesson of all. Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one, and anyone can learn to fix what's broken if they're just given the chance to try.